Hello and welcome to the Analytics Show, the podcast of business through the lens of data science. But together, we'll dive into learning and sharing where various industries are heading and how data and analytics is at the heart of shaping business growth and productivity. Let's spark different ways of thinking about data and analytics that is relevant to you and prepare your business for future disruption. I'm your host, Jason Tan. I'm delighted you could make it on this journey with us. Hey guys, to continue to get support tips, techniques, and tools and learn from the expert, hit that subscribe button wherever you are so we can keep in touch and continue our lifelong learning together. So, are you using your company data to its full potential? Take our embedded analytic assessment to find out your score. A leading organization like Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google have moved beyond dashboard and embedded data science directly into their daily business operation. With our 3-minute test, you will discover your potential in optimizing customer experience and revenue through embedded analytics. You will gain greater clarity, insight, and advice to embed analytics. Plus, you will receive customized results instantly. Find the link to this assessment in the description of this episode. Hi, Matthew. Welcome to the Analytic Podcast Show.
Thank you so much for letting me be part of it. It's a real honor to be here.
I think the honor is ours. It's going to be really, really interesting to talk about such a niche and specialization of the data and analytics for the entertainment industry of how you guys are helping the cinema exhibitor, i.e. the cinema, and also the filmmaker. How do you guys use data and analytics to promote to the customer and to decide if a film is going to be selling or not?
Yeah, so for us, we have a team of data scientists who work with our industry experts and our technologists. And we've built a number of different algorithms that look at moviegoers' propensity to see films. And that algorithm allows us to work out whether somebody's interested in a movie or not based on their viewing history and the history of people like them. So not about demographics, about how they spend their time and their money. We can see not just whether they want to go on a binary yes or no basis, but how much they want to go. And that allows us then to work out how much we need to promote to them to try and encourage them through cinema exhibitors' doors.
Wonderful. I'm going to ask you a little bit more details about that later on. But I want to start it light and ask you, what brought you to the world of entertainment that got you finally to do all this analytic stuff for moviegoer?
Oh, look, I've always wanted to be in cinema. And because some of my earliest memories are going to the movies with my grandparents, my parents, my friends. I'm now old enough to have taken my kids to the movies. My first date with my wife was at the movies. So it's always been in my blood, and I wanted to make a career out of it. And the reason I like cinema as opposed to being a filmmaker or a distributor who gets it to the cinemas is it's right where the audience is. And it's this perfect intersection of creativity and imagination of movies and retail. And I love the idea of being a retail environment of movies for people to get together with their loved ones and enjoy a great story.
Oh, amazing. Interesting. Do you have a favorite movie of all time that you would play again and again and again?
Yeah, it's hard to pick one, but at Movio, we have a movie on our business cards. And so the movie I have on that is a movie from the late 1980s called Midnight Run with Robert De Niro. And it's a fantastic buddy movie. And it's now 32 years old. I can't tell you how many times I watch it. And it's permanently on my iPad.
So what is this movie about, The Midnight Run by?
It's about a bounty hunter, which is Robert De Niro, a really gruff bounty hunter who has to go from Los Angeles to New York to pick up an accountant for the mob. And he's very refined and very polite, and he has to get him back to Los Angeles in 24 hours, and it all goes wrong. And that's what the movie's about.
But I suppose at the end of the day, it just worked out. And at that, it just, to some extent, I feel like it is something that we could relate to building a company, that things could go wrong in between. But what matters is what could be delivered at the end, and it could be delivered.
That's right. And to your analogy, it's worth looking at the end. There's quite a lot of money involved. So, it works out well in the end.
All right. So Movio, the company that you are currently working and you are the CEO over there, I thought it's really, really cool company founded by William Palmer. So what it does, from what my research is, it provides a very niche but important solution to cinema exhibitor and the filmmaker, as we said earlier. And it really opened up my eyes what is done in the cinema space. Now, for the benefit of our listener, could you please give us a little bit of background of what Movio is and what are the main focus of Movio? And I'll come back later to talk a little bit more about the role that you play. But let's talk about Movio.
Absolutely. So we're about to celebrate our 10th anniversary as an organisation. We were founded in 2010, as you say, by William Palmer and his co-founder, a gentleman by the name of Peter Begley. And Movio is a big data campaign and analytics business. We focus solely on cinema exhibition. Our purpose is to connect everyone with their ideal movie, so that they go to the cinema more often, they buy their favourite treats, they sit in their favourite seats with their friends and their family, and they experience the magic of movies. So that's what we do every day. And we achieve it by a combination of behavioural intelligence, driven by our team of data scientists. We have a group of movie industry experts. So I've come from cinema exhibition, but we have other people around the world who've worked in the film industry. And we also have some of the best engineering and design people I've ever come across, people who come to New Zealand solely to work for our organisation. So those three groups help us deliver on our purpose. And our clients tend to be some of the world's leading cinema exhibitors, so the theatre companies, movie studios who make the films, and distributors who are responsible for marketing the films. We have two key products, one that's oriented more towards cinema, that's the Movio Cinema product, and one that's oriented more to distributors and filmmakers, which we call Movio Media.
And under your role, I suppose the cinema product is what you're responsible for. Can you go a little bit more details of how you guys are using data and analytics to help the cinema exhibitor, and how the data scientists come into play in using their skill set to help out?
Yeah, definitely. So the Movio Cinema product is the original product. It's what launched 10 years ago. And if we take that purpose of connecting everyone with their ideal movie, part of what gets me out of bed is the noble purpose of that. But for a cinema exhibitor, if we do that properly, we increase the moviegoers' frequency, their spend on tickets and also food and beverage, and their preference for the cinema exhibitor that we're working for versus their competitor down the road. And so the way we work is with a software as a service platform that ties into the point of sale of the cinema exhibitor. And so as a result of that, we're able to see cinema moviegoers who have joined loyalty programs. We get all the demographic information that they provide when they sign up for that, and their communication information. Through identifying themselves as part of any transaction, we can see anything they purchase. So we can say, show me everyone who went and saw the new Birds of Prey movie, 7 p.m. last night at Event Cinema, and bought a large popcorn and a small drink. So we have that level of granularity by being tapped into the point of sale. We're also able to get information on what people want to see if they build a watch list. If they rate the film, we're able to see what they thought of the movie, not just that they attended it, but whether they liked it or not. And we're able to see this online through online purchases through the cinema exhibitor's own website, or in some countries there are third-party ticket vendors. We can see that as well. And we can also see it in cinema through kiosks or over the box office. And we're able to see it regardless of how the person transacts. So it can be credit card, it can be cash, gift card, voucher, loyalty points. So as a result, we're essentially able to see what moviegoers intend to see through watch lists, what they actually saw through their purchasing history, and what they thought of what they saw by rating and reviewing the film. And that gives us a robust data pool to allow our data science team to develop algorithms that allow us to understand what people are likely to do next. And through our platform, which is not just about forming the audience in the segment, but also creating the campaign, our clients can then communicate with moviegoers by email, SMS, social media, and push. Our platform has built-in control group capability, so we're able to see how people who receive a communication behave and spend versus those who don't, which then means we're able to work with our exhibitors to show them whether they're generating incremental revenue or whether people would have behaved that way regardless of the communication, which I guess then rounds out to one of our other principles, which is we don't see these sorts of activities, loyalty programs, and the work we do as free hugs. It's about an exchange. It's about working with moviegoers to give them things of value, which then allows them and encourages them to identify themselves when they transact. And as a result of that information, the cinema exhibitor can give terrific offers and information to moviegoers to make them do it again and again as a virtuous circle.
So that whole loyalty program is really the cornerstone and the key component of how these things are possible, right? I.e., if I have a loyalty program, I basically will be able to tell you, or you will be able to find out exactly pretty much what I do, provided I log on, provided I provide the loyalty card number as I am purchasing the ticket at the kiosk. The challenges is though that those people who don't have a loyalty program, that is a showstopper because that you basically have no way for you to track them. So what are the tricks or the things that you guys would do to encourage the sign up and the take up rate of the loyalty program to be able to do all those interesting things?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. We help design loyalty programs and help run them on behalf of our clients as well. So we do this beyond just providing a software platform. And when we work with our clients, we think about the exchanges that they need with their members at different points of the life cycle. So when you're trying to encourage somebody who's not a member of the program to join, it's usually at the point of sale when somebody's looking to buy a ticket to a film. And the headspace isn't necessarily about buying or joining a loyalty program. They just want their tickets and their treats and they want to go to the auditorium. So at that point, you need to come up with a value proposition which is really attractive. And I was involved in a program where it was a paid program. At the time, it was $10 to join. $10 got you a free ticket. That was very good economics based on what the ticket price usually was, and it became a bit of a no-brainer. So that's one of the hurdles to get people to sign up. But it's just as important that once they've signed up that they identify themselves at every transaction point. And so you want to make sure that you don't just see what movies they watch, you also want to make sure you understand what food and beverage they purchase, so you have the complete profile. And so things like points become very useful in that situation because in the mind of the cinema goer, they know if I do X, if I show my card and buy some popcorn, I get loyalty points. And so not only then do you have the point of sale operator hopefully asking, are you a member of this program? The member themselves knows that I have to pull my card out because it's worth my own while to do it. And so you look at the program at each of those intervals from sign up to business as usual engagement, to if they start to fatigue, not come in as often, how you win them back. And you think of the exchange of information for rewards to make them work. When we look at loyalty programs around the world, no two are the same, but often free programs, you'll get more than 1 in 5 to 2 in 5 members of the unique guest base who join the program. So we're not talking about a minority here. And of course, those people who join the program tend to be the most engaged and those who come the most often, and so are the most invaluable players. So while you're always having to encourage people to join and stay with the program, we see that our clients around the world have been highly successful in getting a large guest base, and that guest base is made up of those people who are the most valuable customers.
Rewards is always a good way to entice people to sign up and make them sticky. But I think another way of making people to continue using an app or a service such as loyalty program is what I call utility. A classic example would be WhatsApp is a utility. Whether we like it or not, we will always use it. Have you guys looked into that direction to say, how can you turn your loyalty program or maybe the apps that tie into the loyalty program and subsequently the cinema exhibitor and turning that into a utility so that it becomes a little more sticky and hence it increase the usage of the service?
Yeah, another good question. So I guess the WhatsApp is an extreme version in that it's purely utilitarian and it's terrific at what it does. When we look at cinema apps, they have the element of loyalty cards and rewards and those sorts of elements. But a well-created app is also transactional. And it then allows people to check showtimes, buy tickets, potentially share the information with their friends, learn about movies as well, and when they're starting and what they're about. It's not quite as utilitarian as what WhatsApp is, but because of its informational and transactional nature, that goes over and above just the rewards nature of the app. It should be all-encompassing in relation to the operation of a cinema.
Right, that's interesting. Thanks for that. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the offline data. The reason why I say that is because offline data is the really tricky and the challenging one. And how do you bring the offline data together with the loyalty program, which is all those could be recorded and tracked as they purchase the ticket and as they do all those things digitally. So my question is, without revealing any trade secret, do you guys use much of the offline data to build the moviegoer profile? And what do you guys do? What sort of offline data, or what do you guys do with offline data?
Look, the offline data for us in the cinema industry, if anything, is more meaningful than the online data. So yes, we see everything that is transacted within the four walls of the cinema, not just online or app-based purchases. Right. So we will see people who pay cash over the box office to go and see Birds of Prey tonight. And by identifying themselves as a member of a program, that's how we're able to append the transaction to the member, regardless of how they transact or where they transact. But the reason it's so important in cinema is that the majority of tickets are still sold in the cinema and not online. And cash is still a main way that people will transact. Less and less over time as credit card becomes more prevalent. But there's a lot of cash that still goes in cinema. So if you don't have the offline data and you aren't looking at cash, you just don't have a clear picture. And so our ability to integrate with point of sale and to see offline transactions is really one of the key points of difference we have. And when we look at other ways that people are tracking, we like to say our data is not like everyone else's, it's more robust. We know that there are credit card means of tracking people by credit card and when their purchases, but often those credit cards will tell you when they purchased and how much they spent, but not what the item is. So you could see that somebody went to the movies at 7 p.m. tonight. What you won't know is if they saw Bad Boys or Birds of Prey or Won't You Be My Neighbour. So that's not precise enough, especially if you're looking to recommend the next movie based on propensity and viewing habits. And in other parts of the world, not so much Australia and New Zealand, there are often third-party ticket vendors. Almost like going to Ticket Tech to buy rock concerts, you can go to these companies and buy cinema tickets. But these companies only see online data. And the consumer behaviour in our industry is still that unless a movie is really big, often in its opening weekend, like a new Star Wars or a new Avengers, people will often go and buy in theatre. And one of the reasons for that is a lot of exhibitors around the world will charge a convenience fee, a service fee when people buy online. And so if there's no fear of scarcity, if people know that they're going to be able to get a seat, a good seat for the showtime they won't buy online and pay $1 or $1.50 extra per ticket. And so that means these aggregators only see transactions predominantly for big films in their opening days. Whereas not only are we seeing offline, we're also seeing the long tail. And that's another way that we're unique. We see the whole life cycle of the movie, not just the opening weekend.
Now, you talk about the charging a small fee of buying the ticket by the aggregator or the third party. One of the interesting things that I personally feel, and I must admit, I still scratch my head, is the cinema exhibitor in Australia, they are charging you $1.10 to book a ticket online. And I could never understand it at all, I must say, because in my whole thinking is like, wouldn't you want aren't you trying to move the traffic to online so that you can save on your costs, whether it's the wages or whatever space that take up at the cinema? So it seems to me it's contradictory. It's like at one hand they are trying to move you to online, but then you have this little $1.10. $1.10 is not a lot of money, but it is a showstopper. It causes people to think, why should I be paying $1.10 when I'm doing all the job for you to buy my own ticket? So why is that happening?
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and there are different models around the world. I think there's a history in some countries, and to be honest, it's not that uncommon for exhibitors to charge that small booking fee. I think they would argue that they're spending a lot of money on their website and more broadly, and it's a way of funding that. On the other hand, I have seen exhibitors who will waive it, at least for loyalty members, and it's a benefit of joining the program versus being a non-member, is to have that convenience fee waived. And when we look at our clients around the world, there are a couple who are very innovative and actually charge less if you book online than in cinema for a lot of the reasons you just gave there, wanting to lock people in, wanting to understand what the volumes are and potentially saving on payroll. So there is a broad spectrum around the world. I think there are some pros and cons on each, and I think that we'll start to see it evolve in different countries as well. But when you look at loyalty members, and we were talking earlier about why people would join a program, it's often not a bad reward to give somebody the ability to waive that booking fee.
Yeah, well, in that case, I think I can resonate to that, using that $1.10 to some extent, forcing people to sign the loyalty program. That I can relate to it. I must say it frustrates me a lot when I have to pay that $1.10. I know it's not a lot of money, but it just confuses me.
You're not the first person to say that. Don't worry about it. I've heard that around a little bit.
I want to dive in the offline data a little bit further. Do you think there is much we can do by bringing more offline data into this? And the reason why I think this is really, really important is because going to cinema and watching a movie, every single part of those activity is an offline experience in the real world. And unless we have a camera that tracking every single movement as we are within the cinema, that is not something that I'm suggesting. But what I'm trying to say then is a lot of those things are completely offline. And what that basically means is there is no online, there's no digital data, there's no digital movement, there's no digital transaction where we can record, track, and subsequently apply the analytics. What is your thought that, do you think, is that much we can still do with the offline data? Or maybe we are very much at the limitation of what we can do?
Look, I think for cinema, we're almost at the limits of what we need to do, not so much what we can do. If we're able to get people to identify at the transaction point, we have other milestones that we can infer with great accuracy. So if you buy a ticket to Birds of Prey at 7 p.m. at 6:45 tonight, we know the point of transaction, and we know, all else being equal, when you'll be in your seat. And because cinema is an immersive experience, we know, unlike other forms of entertainment, you won't pause it, you won't stop, you probably won't leave. And we know when you'll leave the cinema at the end of the show because we know how long the movie runs for. So we get to do a lot based on other data points so long as we have that trigger point. I think more broadly speaking, beyond cinema, if I was to evaluate whether somebody should focus on offline versus online data, to me, it really comes down to what the ratio of online versus offline is. For us in cinema, it's still mission critical that we have offline data because of the nature of transactions, not just where they occur, but how they occur, how people pay for them. I'm sure there are a lot of businesses around the world that are 90+% online or transacted with credit card as opposed to cash. For them, it's probably not worth investing to get that small delta of cash-based offline transactions. So I think they have to do, each industry, each company would have to do its own cost-benefit analysis and also see what they can infer through other data points, in our instance being the commencement of the show, the runtime, that sort of thing.
The other product that Movio is providing to the filmmaker, the studio, and distribution. So what are the use of the data when it comes to this sort of product in distributing and marketing the product to help the studio to say, is it much about to help them to say, is this movie going to sell based on the statistical data that we have got?
Yeah, when you look at people who make and distribute films, unlike a lot of industries, they have not had a direct relationship with moviegoers. The exhibitor is sat in the middle of that relationship. So the exhibitor has the relationship with the customer, not the person who makes the content, the movie in the first place. And that lack of data has seen, I guess, the studios and the distributors rely a lot on traditional media, the old spray and pray of broadcast TV advertising, billboards, that sort of thing, without knowing who the guest is. And it's also seen them rely a lot on demographics, because in a lot of ways, knowing who somebody is by age and gender is what you rely on when you don't know what they like to watch. So I'm often fond of saying we don't care at Movio if you're an 80-year-old woman going to see Bad Boys or a 15-year-old boy going to see Downton Abbey. It's how you spend your time and your money, what you watch on the screen, which is how you should be targeted. And so working with our exhibitor clients, we make the data available to the studios on an aggregated and anonymous basis. So they can't see anyone by name. There is no personally identifiable information out there. They can't see any individual at all, actually. It's in aggregates and segments. But then what they're able to do with that aggregated data is understand who the audience is for their movies. They can use our algorithms ahead of release, or the actual audience that's purchased once the film's in season, and they can help plan their media and undertake marketing activities as a result. And it allows them on an anonymous basis to do programmatic and social advertising, and to even go back through the loyalty programs of some of our exhibitor clients to undertake targeted direct email campaigns. That's how we work largely with distribution. We work with exhibition, as I've talked a lot about trying to get a moviegoer to come to one cinema chain over another. We work a little bit with production about looking at the marketability of certain movies and certain actors, so understanding who the audience is for that mix. And some of our exhibition clients don't just work in cinema, they have streaming services or home entertainment services of some sort. And so we can work with those clients to say, show me everyone who should have seen a film, who should have seen Bad Boys, but didn't in cinema. Now we are releasing that through our own home entertainment channel. We'll tell them the movie they should have seen is now available. And when the next film comes out, we can tell them to remind themselves how great Bad Boys was, watch it again at home, and then push them back into the cinema and create a virtuous cycle. So from production, it's helping to make casting and creative decisions. From distribution, it's creating brand awareness for the movie. And from exhibition, it's about making them choose one exhibitor over another. And home entertainment's the end of the virtuous cycle to push people back into cinema.
Movio was started in New Zealand, so I presume that it's doing really well in New Zealand and Australia. What is the current success rate in the overseas market that Movio looks to crack into? Especially, I think maybe China is I suppose, is one of the target markets, and different culture and some of the limitation that you are facing because of the quota system, as far as I'm aware of.
Yeah, good question. So yes, we started in Australia and New Zealand, and we're proud that we're quite dominant in this industry. We're really delighted to work with a lot of the leading exhibitors here. But we are in 57 different countries around the world. About 3 in 10 cinema screens around the world use Movio. So we're really proud that this little New Zealand company has been able to help cinema exhibitors all around the world, regardless of their language. We're in places like Latin America, in China, throughout Europe. So we're able to translate the sorts of insights we have and the sort of behavioural differences that we see in moviegoers all around the world, and then work with our clients to ensure that they have best practices from non-competitive regions to make sure that everyone is connecting with moviegoers, because we believe in this industry as much as it's a business for us. We're really evangelical about cinema, and we want to help every exhibitor in every country get as many moviegoers through the door and keep this form of entertainment alive.
Now, before we go into the topic about the streaming service, I'd like to ask you a bit more about Movie Pass. So for the benefit of the audience, Movie Pass is a movie ticket subscription service in the States. Basically, you pay, I think, $50 or $40 a month, and you can go to watch unlimited numbers of movies at the cinema. Now, sadly, it just filed for bankruptcy last month. Do you think the business model could ever work?
Yeah, I really do. So I think we need to separate Movie Pass as a company from subscription as an offering. And so Movie Pass itself didn't work with anyone in the industry. And to be blunt, by the time they filed for bankruptcy, they had upset those people who make the movies, they'd upset those people who show the movies, and they'd upset those people who watch the movies. And so their business model didn't work economically, and from a relationship perspective, they didn't work with the industry. But what we've seen is that they've proved a concept. And a lot of cinema exhibitors, particularly in Europe and the North American region, have come up with their own in-house subscription model. And the economics of it are easier than for a third party. Something like MoviePass, being a third party, only had access to movies, and they had to pay full ticket price for that, regardless of how often people came. Whereas a cinema bringing it in-house has a menu of benefits that they could bring that have a high perceived value but a lower cost. So things like food and beverage, maybe an upgrade to a more premium seat, and they're able to offer those and not just tickets. And so I think that you're going to find subscriptions very viable, but more on an in-house basis than a third-party basis. And they will supplement traditional loyalty programs, paid loyalty programs, and offer something different. So different services and different levels of engagement for different moviegoers.
Now that explanation now starting to make a little bit more sense to me about my understanding that Netflix, the cinema killer, is now started buying cinema in the States. I suppose that perhaps is the direction that they are taking, perhaps because of what you were just describing. What is your thought on this about Netflix buying cinema?
Look, we would really welcome those streaming services from embracing cinema. And Amazon doesn't own cinemas, but they've taken a more traditional way of showing their own produced movies in cinemas, not that different from, say, a Disney or a Warner Brothers, where initially Netflix wasn't following that sort of model. So seeing them invest in cinema, I think, does a couple of things. One is that it shows that they believe in cinema. It's a way of them investing their films and getting a legitimacy. And it sort of calls into mind some market research that I've seen recently that sort of gives even more credence to why they might do it. One thing that was released recently showed that people who stream movies the most are the ones who go to the cinema the most. So rather than be cannibalizing, they're complementary. This research found that those people who go to the cinema 9 or more times a year, which is very heavy in terms of cinema attendance, have a median number of streaming hours of 11 hours per week. So 9 visits a year equals 11 hours a week. On the other hand, if you only go 1 or 2 times a year, you only stream about 7 hours a week. And at the other extreme, they found that about 50% of non-moviegoers, people who didn't go to the cinema once in the last 12 months, don't stream at all. And so what we find is people who love good stories, who love good content, will consume it through multiple channels. And I think Netflix has looked at that as well. One of the other things I would say, though, is that people who love movies, who love content, still think that the best way to experience it is in the cinema. And some research that came out late last year looked at people who watched a movie at home for the first time versus those who watched the same movie in the cinema. So they picked the last Jumanji film, and they asked some people to watch Jumanji at home for the first time, and then they asked other people to watch it in cinema for the first time. And they put other people around those people being experimented on in cinema. So it was a full auditorium. Like, you got the full cinema experience, big screen and lots of people around you. And those people who saw it in cinema found the experience 81% better than those who saw it at home. Which goes back to, I guess, a bumper sticker slogan I have, which is cinema is about experience and streaming is about convenience. And people like an experience. And so I think that's something else that we're seeing Netflix consider. And finally, there's some research just this week that came out that said those people who are choosing what to watch at home on a streaming service are 62% more predisposed to watch a movie that came through a cinema than one that started in streaming, because there's still a credibility about a movie that starts in cinema. You know that it comes with big budgets, a good story. There's a lot of people involved to make sure it's marketable and commercial. And marketable and commercial equals entertaining, hopefully, more often than not, as opposed to the latest film that drops on Netflix with people you don't know and a story you don't know and advertising you haven't seen anywhere other than the homepage of Netflix. And so I think them getting into traditional movies is another indication from that they understand that there is credibility being in that channel as well. So there are a few reasons. It's actually not that different either. I guess Amazon has just gotten into physical bookshops over the last couple of years, and they bought Whole Foods. So we're seeing some of these net-only or net-originating companies get back into bricks and mortar, which I think is a great indication for the viability of out-of-home retail and out-of-home entertainment.
Hey all, I just want to give a quick shout out about this episode. It's sponsored by the Embedded Analytic Program at DDA. And the Embedded Analytic Program is designed for senior manager and executive in the business team who want to integrate data science into daily business operation and use it to drive customer experience excellence and revenue. And book unlimited strategy session for a full year and start embedding analytics into the business frontline. For more information about this program, please refer to the description of this episode. Now, let's get on back to the interview.
I want to talk a little bit more about the streaming company and the streaming service because that is really what getting the headline. But also at the same time, that in the last 5 years, there have been more and more streaming company founded around the world. You have the Australian version, you have the state version that taking around the world, and the latest one is the Disney Plus that signed up 20 million subscribers in the first 24 hours, which is crazy. I know, right? Well, unless there will be a consolidation in the industry, I feel like many of the people are gonna end up paying multiple streaming subscription in order to be able to watch the shows that they want to watch. Like, for example, the Good Morning America by Jennifer Aniston is only in Apple. So if you don't have an Apple service, then you technically can't watch it, right? So what do you think is going to happen?
I think it's going to be a real interesting landscape to watch. And I think in the short term, at least, there's going to be more fragmentation as the studios try and establish direct relationships with viewers instead of going through pay TV networks or broadcast TV as they have had to do in the past. But from a consumer perspective, it gets challenging because each of these services adds up. They're on average, I guess, $10 to $15 a month. But if you're taking on multiple services, you can get towards $100 quite quickly. That's the dollar side of it. But it's also hard to work out where the show you want to watch is. You know, in our house, and I know I'm just a poll of one, we have Netflix, Amazon, Disney Plus. We have a local service here called Neon, which shows HBO and Showtime product. I lived in LA for 5 years and I still have the Major League Baseball channel for my sport. So in our house, we have 5 different channels and sometimes free to air, which we watch through streaming. We don't watch through a broadcast signal. We did cut the cord. We don't have traditional pay TV anymore. But we'll sit there with these 5 services and we'll forget where a particular show is. We're jumping from one to the other and there's no aggregator across services. So I can go to Amazon, it might recommend something for me, and Netflix as well. But if I fall into the couch in an hour and a half tonight and want to watch some TV, there is nothing that's going to tell me the best show across all of those different channels. And so I think that's going to become a real challenge. It feels like you're working for entertainment on the couch. And as I mentioned earlier, watching entertainment on the couch is about convenience. And so in some ways, in some almost perverse way, I think that helps cinema because it's easy. You know, there's 10 to 15 films that are showing. They change every week. You're aware of what's out there through advertising on social, through loyalty programs, through mainstream media, through out of home. And you know where to find it because that cinema building is always there. It's probably been there for 20 years. Hopefully it's been refurbished. But there's more certainty. And so you don't have to work as hard to find the content you want. When you go there, it's more immersive and it's more experiential. So I feel that in a backhanded way, this fragmentation of streaming services might make it even more appealing for a night out where you don't have to work in the cinema.
Maybe there's a product that Movio should consider building, aggregator to all the online streaming services.
Who knows? Who knows? You might have given us an idea there.
I think there's a potential in there. I mean, imagine as you are opening up the app, typically, unless you know exactly what you want to watch, then you only do the search. But otherwise, you are very much just scrolling to see what is attractive to watch. So, and I cannot quite imagine that you have to turn off and turn on the other app 4 or 5 times just to find something you want to watch. So, maybe.
Yeah. And look, if you're like my wife, and I don't think she's unusual, she just falls back to Law and Order reruns because it's too hard to do everything you were talking about. So she watches a self-contained hour of TV that she can switch off, and that's fine. And I think when you look at what entertainment's doing, a lot of these shows, be it Game of Thrones or The Boys or whatever else is the show of the day, they're multi-season longitudinal stories, and you've got to stay with them. And there's so much content. There's always a new show dropping that it's hard work. It's hard to be a fan on the couch these days.
Now, I feel like a lot of these streaming services, and in one case, as I read that Netflix was arguing about, I'm sorry, before I go on, what I'm trying to say that is all these online streaming services is actually a threat to the localized contents on TV. Localized content on TV, what I mean by that is by legislation, Channel 9, Channel 10 in Australia, they have to have certain percentage, I think is about 10 or 15% of the TV program that is about Australia and that is filmed in Australia, etc. That is by mandate. Whereas all these online services, they don't have this sort of mandate. They are not bounded. And Netflix is arguing against it. So do you think it's as they are dominating the world, it's gonna be a big threat to the localized contents then?
Yeah, and look, you've hit a point I'm really passionate about. I was lucky enough to sit on the board of Screen Australia for 2 terms. And Screen Australia is the federal government body responsible for overseeing film and television content, locally produced film and television content. And the reason I feel so lucky to be part of it is I really do believe in Australian content being available for Australians. And where I am now in New Zealand, that New Zealanders should see their own culture. And so I have a particularly strong view that if these organisations like Netflix don't look after local content themselves, that it is a strong argument for some form of regulatory intervention. And I think that it's important not just for the producers and all of our fine actors and artisans and technicians to have a career. I think that's important. But I think it's even more important that we see our own cultures on our screen.
Correct.
And I think that we need to make sure that that isn't lost as these streaming services become more predominant. I guess I have some hope in that I've noticed really over the last 12 months a lot more foreign content on Netflix. So not necessarily Australian content, but non-English speaking, non-American, non-British shows starting to emerge. And I'm hoping that that translates to all countries around the world that show Netflix. I think look, I will be there on the opening weekend for any Star Wars or any Avengers. I love them. But I think our society would be worse off if we don't see our own people and tell our own stories on the big screen. So I do hope that that's solved because you raise a legitimate challenge.
Exactly. I do not know the impact of the movie in terms of the culture, but to some extent it represents the culture. I mean, we wouldn't want to see Hollywood movie star all the time for the entire world, right? So that representation and the cultural representation is really important. And I think that's probably the concern that people should have, or at least from the, like you were saying, like, for example, the body like filming Australia should be concerning.
Yeah, 100% agree with you.
Now, at the same time, the question, moving on a little bit more about the tech company. So tech company like Apple, Amazon, Google, and including Facebook. And I'm not sure if people thought about that or not. Facebook, all these 4 big tech companies, they are gearing up their focus in the video space. They are very much trying to dominate that space, and I feel like they probably would be killing the TV sometime soon. Even Apple and Amazon, like we were talking earlier, that they are following the footsteps of Netflix to produce their own video content, and there's a real good reason of that. So how do you think cinema as a theater should adapt itself in this changing environment in order to attract people to watch movies in cinema?
Look, one of the reasons I have such faith in cinema is I've looked at its history. And, cinema is about 120 years old. It's not really that old. And it's been counted down and out so many times over the last 120 years. You know, when television came out, it was going to be the end. When videos came out, cinemas were going to die. Then DVD, now streaming services. And the reason I think that cinema's still here is that those in the industry aren't complacent. They look over their shoulder for competitors and they adapt. And so when video came out in the 80s, we started to see the cinema industry respond with multiplexes. So cinemas went from having 1 or 2 screens to having 8 to 15 to 20 screens. When DVD started to come out in the 90s, cinema responded with 3D, with gold class style premium cinemas with expanded food and beverage. And now as we get into a streaming environment, we're seeing that experience go up even higher. So around the world, mainstream cinema auditoriums are taking out the old style seats and putting recliners in. Some are putting in motion seats. They're putting in extended food and beverage. We have some cinema chains we work with in the United States where essentially they've taken out every second row and put a bench in, and they're serving jugs of beer and pizza. And it's like going to your favourite bar, except you're in the cinema auditorium. And so you've had gold class for 20 plus years, which is like fine dining. Now you have your favourite gastropub. Others are pending themselves to bowling alleys and full service restaurants. And so there's a real change in physical amenity as well. So the cinemas, what you expect when you walk through the front door of a cinema is changing and elevating in really meaningful ways. That's the physical side of things. To me, though, the ultimate way of making sure that cinema survives and continues to thrive is through the customer service side of things. And so when I was in cinema exhibition before joining Movio, I had a presentation, and the first part of the presentation was a cinema screen. And I would talk to people and say, you know, this is the way we've always thought about, even as cinema exhibitors, marketing our business. It's been about the content on the screen. But all of our competitors have the same movies. Everyone has Avengers on the opening weekend. And as you were talking earlier, there are so many streaming services with forms of content as well. And so content alone is not enough. And so that then in my presentation, I would hit the button and we would do a 180-degree pivot. And we would now face the audience and we would look at the people in the seats, and they're all different. They're different in their tastes, their age, what they like to eat. And so this is how we now look after our industry. It's not solely about the content. It's more about the people in the seat. It's about knowing them as individuals and treating them personally and giving them more of what they want so they come more often. And I guess that's the full circle to how we started the conversation. Knowing who people are through loyalty programs, through subscription programs, is a way of giving that personalised service and raising the experience of going to the cinema beyond what's on the screen itself to the entire experience from the minute you think about going until you walk out the cinema at the end of the film planning your next visit. And I think that that's how we continue to compete and thrive in an industry where content's available on any screen of any size.
I want to tie this whole interview and whole discussion into one last question. We talk about the cinema, we talk about the streaming service, and we talk about data and analytics, which is the whole show is about. And the way I look at it is that the biggest advantage that the streaming company or the tech player have is their ability to collect different data. And what I mean by that, for example, is that it will be entirely possible for this tech player to capture how many times that I watch the same movie, where do I pause, what time do I watch. All these things can then be brought into the granularity of the data are possible to be captured and then brought into the analytics to build up all the personalization. These things are not possible in offline world like cinema. Do you think, I suppose, if you have a crystal ball, based on your understanding and the expertise in the industry, do you think these other things could maybe possible in some time in the future?
Look, I think when I look at what's available now in terms of when people are buying, what show times they're seeing, their preferred time of day, day of week, even week of month, all of that is available to us as a company at Movio, and we're able to serve that with our clients. Of course, we can't see if people pause or dash off to the bathroom or to get a drink But I would say that Netflix needing to look at that, and also looking at people who drop off halfway through a movie or 2 episodes into 10-episode series, is also a reflection of the flaw of the model, which is it's easy to get distracted and it's easy to leave. And so with cinema, we can see all the beats leading into the film, and we can ask people what they thought of the movie after, so we match what they saw with what they thought of it. But once you're in your seat and the lights go down, it's an immersive experience, and the need to know whether people pause or run off is not as necessary. And I think that the differences in being able to record things at home versus in cinema will never need to be in complete parity, because they are different in that front. And so I think that it's important for the industry, for cinema, to increasingly ask people what they want to see and what they thought of what they saw. But what they actually saw, I think, is well covered through what we do and through both the online and offline channels that we're able to track.
I'm going to end this with my usual question. What is one book that you read in the recent time that you would wish to give it to your younger self? And why is this book?
Yeah, the book's called Creating Magic, and it's by a man by the name of Lee Cockrell, and he used to run the Walt Disney Resorts. So at the time he ran it, he had 60,000 employees. Now, I'm a massive Disneyland fan. I switch between loving it as a child at heart and loving it as an entertainment professional and just watching the client experience, the guest experience they give. And I've gone to Disneyland a number of times and repurposed ideas and brought them back to cinema industry and cinema exhibition when I've worked in it. And this book looks at how you treat guests. And so while we talk about big data here, the data is for a purpose. And our purpose is connect everyone with their ideal movie and to give them a magical experience, to allow them to experience the magic of cinema. And this book is the best book I've ever seen about how to treat guests in a way that delights them. And I always take inspiration from that in how we try and apply the insights and the learnings we have at Movio. I think it's must reading, and it's fun to read too. It's not like homework.
And I think that is probably a lot of the people are missing the point when it comes to the use of the data and analytics, that data and analytics or data science or even AI it's just an enabler to treat guests better, to make people feel more welcome, to build the experience that they could never get at somewhere else. And that should be the goal. The rest of the things should be enabled.
That's such a good point. And, it's true you could use data for, I'll exaggerate, it's true you can use data for evil purposes. I could try and get you to go to the cinema tonight with an offer that looks good, but when you show up, the fine print tricks you and it's not as attractive as you thought. That's pretty easy to do. And you might even buy the ticket because you're there, you've driven, you've parked the car, it's your plan for the night. But you'll have such a bad taste in your mouth that you won't come back and you'll tell people. And so when I look at what a loyalty program does, and when I look at how you use data, it has to be for good. It has to be for a long-term relationship, and you have to do the right thing by your guests. And that starts from a regulatory basis. You have to safeguard their personal information like it's your own. But you should only ever use it in a way that's going to delight them and make them feel good and give them enjoyable experiences with their friends and family. Otherwise, you're dead in the water. And I don't think you'd feel very good about yourself either.
Thank you, Matt. Has been a wonderful conversation we had about what you guys are doing at Movio and how to use data and analytic data science to help the cinema exhibitor to help preserve that sort of culture that we have got in the last 120 years. Thank you so much.
Hello. If you enjoyed this conversation, hit that subscribe button so we can meet again. If you don't, I'll be stuck in an infinite loop. So pull that part by clicking the subscribe and help me out. You can further support us by leaving us a kind review from wherever you are listening. At the end of the year, I will choose a reviewer to send a special gift to, and it might just be you. Look forward to seeing you here next week for a new adventure, if I can find my way out of this endless loop. See ya!